Fleeced and bamboozled. Tough words from senators telling the president's top diplomat that only the most naive people on earth think the Iran nuclear deal is a good deal for the U.S., leading to some fireworks in a Senate hearing room. This is Special Report. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. Secretary of State John Kerry says the idea the U.S. could have held out for a better deal with Iran over its nuclear program is a fantasy. But critics of the deal grilled him today during the first congressional hearing into the agreement. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has tonight's top story from the White House.
Members of a far-left group applauded Secretary of State John Kerry, but members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on both sides of the aisle had more pointed commentary on the Iran nuclear deal.
I believe you've been fleeced.
You guys have been bamboozled.
That would be the equivalent of the fox guarding the chicken coop.
Kerry noted that the British, French, and Germans all approved the deal, too.
And they're not dumb.
Responding to reports that Iran, not inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency, will be collecting environmental samples at suspicious sites like the military base at Parchin, the cabinet officers argued the Iranians, to receive sanctions relief, will respect the chain of custody for critical nuclear evidence.
They know that they must have and be able to articulate a process with integrity.
Kerry, however, made some demonstrably false statements.
Nobody has ever talked about actually dismantling their entire program.
In fact, Kerry himself previously told Congress that dismantlement was the goal of the sanctions.
We did it because we knew that it would hopefully help Iran dismantle its nuclear program.
Likewise, Kerry suggested, as he has before, that inaction by the Bush administration tied President Obama's hands.
When we began our negotiations, they had 19,000 centrifuges, up from the 163 that they had back in 2003 when the prior administration was engaged with them on this very topic.
In fact, IAEA reports show 75% of Iran's centrifuges were installed on Mr. Obama's watch. And lastly, there was this, about whether Iran would face anytime, anywhere inspections.
I can tell you I never uttered the words anywhere, anytime, nor was it ever part of the discussion that we had with the Iranians.
In fact, such access was part of the U.S. negotiating posture as late as April of this year.
Under this deal, you will have anywhere, anytime, 24/7 access as it relates to the nuclear facilities that Iran has.
When Senator Corker told Kerry he got fleeced by the Iranians, Democrat Barbara Boxer of California objected to that remark, saying it insulted the intelligence of the Secretary of State, went to his very core as a human being. And so Corker later revised his remarks to say, we were fleeced by the Iranians. Bret.
James Rosen live on the North Lawn. James, thank you. President Obama's contention this week that there was no IRS targeting of conservative groups is taking a big hit tonight. Correspondent Peter Doocy tells us about a new report that basically states no one was minding the store at the tax agency.
A watchdog told the IRS months ago there are 10 things they should do to make sure nobody is ever unfairly audited again. And so far, the IRS has only implemented 2 of their suggestions.
When I have a list of this many recommendations that still need to be done, it's awfully hard for me to tell the people in my district that, yes, you can trust the IRS.
A 76-page-long Government Accountability Office report finds that political and religious groups are still vulnerable to mistreatment from the taxman because IRS employees reviewing their forms often do so without consulting bosses and without leaving much of a paper trail, making it almost impossible to go back and figure out if a person or group actually deserved extra scrutiny or if they were singled out for their beliefs.
Imagine the taxpayer who decided that he was going to miss 4 or 5 of the different sections in filing their tax. That part, I just didn't feel like filling it out. If there's ever an agency that ought to be checking every box, it's the IRS.
The IRS commissioner admits that paperwork can be done better and that some conservative groups were once treated poorly, but he can't say why.
It's not in my realm of the information I have, they determined that, well, it was, quote, targeting or not.
Koskinen is comfortable, however, boasting that his agency is now bias-free.
We're going to do a lot of audits. They're going to cover the entire political spectrum. They're going to cover people who go to church, people who don't go to church, people who went to political rallies, people who never do.
So where does that put the chances of an audit for Planned Parenthood? They've had tax-exempt status for a long time, but they've also apparently been involved with the transfer, if not sale, of body parts from abortions.
I'm looking at an organization right now, Planned Parenthood, with a 501c3 status, and looking at the numbers and saying, my God, do we really have a blind eye and a deaf ear to what's going on there? And are these people ever going to be audited?
Any tax-exempt organization can have unrelated business income. They have to pay tax on it.
But Planned Parenthood insists they do not profit from these sales, and if the IRS does decide to audit, we may never know because those things are normally kept confidential. Brett?
Peter, thank you. Hillary Clinton has made her first comments about the Planned Parenthood scandal, and like some of her Democratic colleagues, she's trying to shift the blame to the group producing the undercover videos.
I think it is unfortunate that Planned Parenthood has been the object of such a concerted attack for so many years. And it's really an attack against a woman's right to choose, to make the most personal, difficult decisions that any woman would face.
Also today, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said she wants an investigation into the organization behind the undercover videos. A federal appeals court says the state of Washington can require a pharmacy to dispense medicine even if the store's owner has a religious objection. The decision overturns a lower court ruling that struck down the law. The case involves pharmacists who objected to selling emergency contraceptives. The head of the FBI says when it comes to terror groups, the junior varsity is now better than the varsity. The comment comes as the Pentagon's head man makes a surprise visit to a place where the next battle in the war against terror will be fought. Correspondent Doug McKelway is traveling with the Defense Secretary and reports tonight from Baghdad.
Today's Iraq visit was held secret until Secretary of Defense Ash Carter's C-17 was on the ground in Baghdad. Testament that this war-torn country remains a very dangerous place, 25 years after the first Gulf War. He vowed in meetings with Prime Minister Abadi that the outcome of this latest war with ISIS or Daesh is certain.
We will defeat Daesh because civilization always wins over barbarity.
His Iraq stop capped a difficult week. Israel remains openly disdainful of the Iran deal, while beneath diplomatic niceties, Gulf region Arab allies remain deeply skeptical of it. One example, a Jordanian official overheard on Wednesday expressing concern during a benign photo op with Carter.
Sometimes it's difficult. What's the U.S. strategy?
Here in Baghdad, Carter found some encouragement. 3,000 coalition-trained Iraqi troops have now joined the battle to retake Ramadi and have shown courage, according to U.S. advisors. One unit advancing 6 kilometers towards Ramadi in 24 hours despite numerous roadside bombs planted by ISIS. The Iraqi security forces have now encircled the city, starving ISIS of supplies. Carter is also demonstrating an affinity for the troops. They appear to sense that. On 2 stops this week at an air base in Jordan and here in Baghdad, soldiers asked not about the ISIS threat in theater, but at home. Their instincts apparently similar to those of the FBI director, who differs from President Obama's view of ISIS 18 months ago as the JV team.
ISIL is not your parents' al-Qaeda. It's a very different model, and by virtue of that model, it's currently the threat that we're worrying about in the homeland most of all.
A bigger test will come when Iraqis launch a full-fledged assault to retake Ramadi.
They're the ones that are going to have to do this. They're the ones that are going to have to restore their territory.
The Iraqis cannot do it themselves. That's why they're losing.
Whatever the result, this is a country that cannot stand much more hardship.
The United Nations says that ISIS's advances in Iraq have led to one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. 8.2 million Iraqis are in need of humanitarian assistance. 3.1 million have fled their homes, and 4.4 million are said to be food insecure. Traveling with the Secretary of Defense in Baghdad, Doug McKelway, Fox News.
Up next, Donald Trump makes a run to the border and takes a whole bunch of people along for the ride. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 31 in Denver, as jurors in the trial of convicted theater shooter James Holmes unanimously agree that the death penalty would be a just response. Next up, the defense will contend Holmes' mental illness makes it wrong to execute him. Fox 2 in San Francisco with a Napa County wildfire that officials say is spreading rapidly. CAL FIRE says the blaze has burned about 6,000 acres so far and is only about 5% contained. It began after a vehicle crashed yesterday. And this is a live look at Milwaukee from our affiliate Fox 6. The big story there tonight, the search for what witnesses say is a lion on the loose on the city's north side. There is brief and sketchy cell phone video of something. Tuesday, a man shot what he thought was a lion, but it turned out to be a dog. One expert says she thinks it's a male cougar that is someone's pet. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.